Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 53 of Above Board with Candor Path. Today, I'm really excited because we have a good friend of mine and a guest to the show. So we don't have the Rich B today. We don't have Matt Marcoux today, but it's going to be me and my buddy, Brian HYSER. Brian, say hi to the audience.
Hey, everybody.
So Brian is a real estate agent. He owns his own real estate brokerage here in Orlando. The firm actually just celebrated their 1-year anniversary. But what's really cool about Brian and his company is that just inside of that 1 year, his team is 18 and growing. He's got a full a marketing support staff as well as a number of agents. I think it's 16 agents, Brian, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yep. And I think, what most listeners would assume in having Brian on the show, that we're going to come in and make real estate projections and prophecies and talk about this ever-changing market that we're currently in. But that's actually, maybe we'll touch on some of that. I don't know. That'll be fun.
Cool.
Maybe towards the end. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. Today, we want to focus on Brian's journey. Brian once had a thriving chiropractic business, but found himself falling out of love with his work and wanting to reinvent himself. And I think anyone who's listened to our show before, this is just such a perfect story with what we talk about. A lot of our conversations are pursuing your passions, doing what you love. And Brian's story is just that. So Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you, man. Appreciate having me.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. So let's maybe jump right into that conversation.
Okay.
So you gave me a little bit of a detail on the pre-call. So started your chiropractic business about 12 or 13 years ago.
Gosh, yeah.
And just talk to me about that journey, because that's what you went to school for. That's what you started doing. What did that look like?
So, I grew up right outside of Chicago, about an hour outside of Chicago. And I got recruited to play basketball at a small little Division II school in Joliet, Illinois, like 30 minutes outside of the city. And my freshman year, my coach's wife was actually a chiropractor. So my whole, plan was go into athletic training, do something, stay in the sports world, do that kind of thing. And, my whole mindset shifted once, the coach made us go to, get adjustments every single week. And I was like, what's the point? I'm healthy. I don't have back pain. I learned all this stuff, going through the first 3 years of basketball, and ended up making that shift from athletic training to pre-chiropractic, and came down, went to Palmer, in Davenport, Iowa. It's the fountainhead of the chiropractic world.
Okay.
And after graduation, had to take an internship, and said, let's go somewhere that I haven't lived before. I'm a Midwest boy. I've only been to a few different places. So decided to come down to Florida in Lake Mary, and interned with a guy for 6 months, and just fell in love with the area, fell in love with just the warm weather. And and then so after my internship was over, took a job with another chiropractor and learned the marketing and just the different types of chiropractic, because that's one thing that a lot of people don't really talk about. Everybody thinks it's just a back pain place.
Mm-hmm.
But down here in Florida, personal injury is a huge part of a practice. And we're talking sports accidents, work injuries, car accidents, that kind of thing. So after my internship was over, he was focused mostly on a wellness practice. I got into the whole personal injury world. Financially, you make more money that way. You're working with like auto insurance, that kind of thing. Ended up partnering with another chiro to open up 22 Health, was the name of the practice. And we kind of exploded to 5 locations within the first 5-6 years. Basically an office a year is what we decided to do. And then, from there, I started to lose the passion of of helping people, because it kind of turned into more of a, helping, I want to say, the world of personal injury is a lot different than people probably imagine. There's a lot of,
I could see the burnout being a higher rate for you as the chiropractor if you're operating that world, right?
Yeah. And the part of the relationship my partner and I had was, I focused more on the business management side of it, working with hospitals, different attorneys and trying to build the practice and continue to build. Whereas his side of it was more just focusing on, the doctors, the patient care, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it worked perfect, as a partnership, because that's kind of what I like to do. I like the business. I like to build the business. Um, I just, I just felt like our, the plan. I don't want to say the plan, but the passion for helping people, I kind of lost it, and it
Sure.
kind of just felt like, I was just kind of spinning in circles. So
Yeah.
um, we were getting closer to 2017, 2018, and I've had multiple conversations with Laura, with my wife, about, is this what I want to continue doing? Our first son was basically on the way. Well, no, shoot, no, I'm sorry. He was 2016. He was about a year old. So
Shout out to Cam.
shout out to Cam. That's right. So yeah, so he's just about a year old, and I was working tons of hours, and that's okay. I'm you know me. I'll work whatever I have to be able to support my family. But it was, I didn't have the flexibility that I wanted. Be able to
Mm-hmm.
be home, go to Disney. Us. With the kids on a Wednesday, if I wanted to just kind of just take a day off. So um, we got to a point where I decided, let's get my real estate license. Maybe we'll get into the whole investing in properties, do something that kind of, I have more fun with.
Mm-hmm.
That was 2000, was it 2017, 2008, end of early 2018.
And Brian,
Uh,
for context, at this
yeah,
stage of your life, we're talking probably early 30s, I think.
what was that?
Which,
It would have been 5 years ago. So I was 32.
yeah, which is really important because even at 32, depending on what generation you're a part of listening to this show, that might sound young, that might sound old, but I think I think in your early 30s, you feel like you're over a decade into your career. You've
Right.
made this decision, and how many people I know I see in doing personal finance for folks at that point in time say, well, this is the choice I made, and now this is the path I have to go down.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm going to burn the next several decades just continuing to do what I'm unhappy doing.
Right.
And
Right.
I'm guessing at this point in time, you didn't know what it was going to evolve into. You didn't know that you were going to start a real estate brokerage and have a bunch of agents that you lead at that
Mm-hmm.
time yet, but
Zero
you were
idea.
taking action, right? You were taking action to do something and take control of those feelings, which I think is really important, because most people would just say, you know what, I'll do it. I'll deal with it
Yeah.
and spend these next several decades being unhappy.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, it was scary, because you're so used to a salary every single month, and obviously I was still self-employed at that time, but we built a business where you know it was just kind of running itself,
Yeah.
right? So and that was part of the struggle for me, is I feel like, and my wife will tell you, I always have to be doing something, I always have to be building something, so having a practice with the 5 locations, and not kind of still going up. It was kind of more
Mm-hmm.
just kind of a steady, that I was happy with that. Um, I wanted to do something else. So the investing in properties was kind of what was going to fill my plate.
Mm-hmm.
So got my real estate license in February 2018, planning on, just buying a property, maybe flipping it or turning it into a rental. That was kind of what the whole plan was. And I got a phone call, and I'll never forget this day. I got a phone call from Zillow, asking to, I knew you're a new agent in the area. We'd like to talk to you about, market, becoming a Zillow Premier agent in Sanford, Florida, which is right next to where we live. We spend $1,000 a month. We'll connect you to buyers. And, so I was like, shoot, let's try it. I mean, $1,000, okay, a lot of money, but let's try it, because I think it could be something I like to do. So then the first couple of days, I got a phone call, from a buyer saying, hey, we're looking at a property, that I'd like to see. Is it possible that you can help me? And just so the audience knows, like, the Zillow works, it's a marketing platform,
Mm-hmm.
so us as agents pay into Zillow to connect ourselves with potential buyers. And that's how that whole thing works. And ended up showing him like 20, 30 houses. Had no idea what I was doing. he ended up finding one. We go under contract, $800,000 house. I'm like, start doing the numbers in my head. And I'm like, okay, I love this. I absolutely had a blast looking at houses with these people, with this family, and I'm making money with it, doing it. So I was like,
Hmm.
okay, this is really, really cool. So that led into, I guess, kind of like falling out of love more on the chiropractic side. So
Sure.
had a meeting with my partner. We were we had already started a phase where he was wanting to go one way with the company, I was wanting to go the other, and we always had amazing relationship throughout the the seven years that we were together. But I kind of presented it to him where I was like, you want to go this way, maybe we work a buyout. And it kind of hit him off a little bit off guard, because I don't think he ever thought I was going to like want to walk away completely. So
Yeah, being
over the
unhappy and making a complete life-altering career change are two different things, right?
I mean, not and
Most people
not
don't.
even. Yeah, so it was crazy. So we ended up, over the next couple of months, just kind of agreeing to terms, on basically me walking away with, with a buyout and whatnot, which made it a lot easier for myself to get into the real estate world, because I basically had a big chunk of money where I could say, okay, that $1,000 I was spending, maybe let's turn it into five now, because I have enough to
Hmm.
be able to to invest more into my marketing. And I'm all my business relationships and building a business is what I'm passionate about. So, and I understand marketing. I understand that you got to put money out there in order to get the ROI. So yeah, so I started, getting into, ended up getting my real estate license with Charles Rutenberg, one of the largest, brokerages here in the state of Florida. They're basically like an 100% commission based, brokerage. So there's not a ton of, I want to say there's support, but there's not a ton of training, not a ton of coaching. It's just more of a place to hang your license.
Hmm.
And for me, I was like, what, I have other agents that I know that I can kind of ask questions, or kind of be that mentee, or he can be my mentor. So I went that route, and yeah, I mean, from there it just kind of took off.
Yeah.
Spending money marketing, getting more and more buyers. I always say you get more balls in the air. So I was constantly doing that, and I loved it because I had the flexibility to do what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Work as hard as I want to. Work when I wanted to, be able to take vacations when I wanted to. I didn't feel like I was really tied down to anything.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, you're
yeah,
very entrepreneurial spirited too. So I feel like being able to scratch that itch even more. That I mean, you basically like outside looking in as a chiropractor or even as a realtor, someone might think, well, that's the service-based profession that person's in. But
yeah,
you on the chiropractic side wore the business hat,
yeah,
on operations and business development, and probably very much the same with real estate. What I think is kind of unique, and at least what I'm hearing is, so you get your real estate license, you start with the idea of, hey, we're just going to test this out, maybe flip a property, do some investment stuff,
right,
and then you try this Zillow thing and you get a lead, and you find out by 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 virtue of doing that, you find out you love it. But
yeah,
I'm gonna guess you weren't not working still yet on the chiropractic side. Like you're still putting in the time, you're still doing work.
absolutely,
And Matt talks about this a lot on previous shows and with clients. Like, this term side hustle, it's probably overused.
yeah.
But
Oh,
he
it
the
was.
way
It was a side hustle. Yeah,
yeah, and it was, right? Like you find margin in your downtime to put in extra effort somewhere else. And maybe that sucks because you're doing two jobs at once.
yeah,
But that's what you had to do. As you said, you were scared when you started this, but that's also what you had to do to find out if you were really truly in love with this or not. It's not like you could just stop and devote all your time to this. You had a transitionary period where this was a side hustle turned into full-time job.
yeah. And the great thing about it, which like the stars aligned in the sense where in the Cairo side of it, the business development side of it, doctors only work till like 3 or 4 o'clock. Right.
Hmm.
I mean, so when I went and did, meetings with attorneys, lunches with attorneys, met with doctors, that was my morning. I would be 8 to 2 o'clock or 9 to 2 o'clock doing that. And, a lot of people have jobs on the real estate side. So they're calling me saying, hey, I want to see houses after 5. So it was
Hmm.
basically Cairo in the morning, real estate, at night. And that's kind of how it was for the first 6 to 8 months when we were kind of going through the transition of the buyout.
Mm-hmm.
So I was enjoying it because I felt like I was kind of I was building again. I was starting over. I was working. I always had to be doing something. So
Mm-hmm.
I was happy. I mean, Laura said it. She's like, Brian, towards the end of 2017, she's like, you look depressed, and it was just because I wasn't building what I wanted. I didn't feel like I can continue, or I could continue to scale where I was, the Cairo business anymore. Just being, two of us. So yeah, so like now getting into the whole real estate thing, and I was loving it. I was
Yeah.
working, when I wanted to. I was showing houses on the weekends, and our son was just young enough where I could kind of get away for a few hours, go show some houses, and then
Mm-hmm.
come back and we could hang out with the fam. So but yeah, so that's the transition was tough, but it was also it worked out perfect.
How
You
hard
know,
was it to emotionally make the decision that you knew you needed to make a change? Because I would assume that you didn't necessarily know if real estate was or wasn't going to work out. You ended up loving it, which was cool. But was there a period of time where when you said like 2017, you were feeling depressed, or you were just going through the motions of the work that you were doing, not feeling the fulfillment you were hoping you
yeah,
would get?
yeah.
Um, what did that? I mean, did you know, okay, real estate's going to be the thing, or I'm going to try this, and if this doesn't work, I'm going to try this, and if that did you have a kind of a game plan of what that would look like?
So Laura and I were going through when Cameron was born. We were doing counseling, not in a bad way, but just counseling because it was healthy for
Hmm.
our marriage. And a lot of those conversations kept on coming out with our counselor, basically talking about, Brian, how are you? And I just felt like I was very stagnant. I
Yeah.
wasn't doing what I wanted to. So a lot of the conversation was, well, what makes you happy?
Hmm.
And I remember one of the meetings about, when we bought our first house and talking about that process of looking at houses. I loved it. I was like, man, this is awesome. I'd love to, we ended up hiring a realtor, Peter Yates, who was my first agent. We onboarded at the brokers, in July. Um, he was our realtor. And I talked to him about this, and he laughs at me still because I was like, man, I'd love to get into real estate. I think this would be awesome. And he's like, dude, you're a chiropractor. Why would you want to get into real estate? And I was like, I don't know. I just, what you do is just so much fun. Like, it just looks awesome. I mean, he's pulling up, he's dressed casual, he's got a nice car, and like, he's working outside, meeting new people every day. Like, that's pretty cool. And
Yeah.
the money that you make selling homes I mean, it's not bad,
Yeah.
So, especially in the
I think
Florida
that
market.
should be even more motivational for people listening, though. The idea that his comment to you was, dude, you're a chiropractor. What are you talking about?
He went
Because
to
in
school.
the optics of that situation is you couldn't have two more opposite ends of the spectrum from an industry perspective. Like one has absolutely nothing to do with the other.
Right.
And that's okay, because if you find passion in what you're doing, it doesn't have to make sense. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to, as long as you enjoy it. That's, I think, what matters the most.
And how many people go to college and get a degree and end up changing their career? I mean,
Yeah.
Laura and I were talking about this last night. You're 18 years old. Like, how do you don't have it figured out yet?
Right.
There's so many people that just change career paths and whatnot. But, being 32, like you said, you kind of feel like if you don't do it now, you're
Yeah.
never going to do it. So
Yeah.
that was kind of part of my mindset was like, I'm still young enough where, if I started over, I'd still have a good, 20, 30 years to build a pretty decent career. So,
I
um,
think that was the point I was trying to make too, was that feels like a monumental shift and decision to make at
yeah,
32. It feels even heavier at 42 or at 52. But even if someone were to wait that long, let's say you're in your early 40s, like you still have a couple of decades, if not
right,
more, of work that you're going to ahead of you that you're going to
right,
do.
right.
And so to find your passion, I know that that's easier said than done. And that's probably what someone listening to this might think, but you really pushed through. You made this a side hustle. You found something you loved, and then you made that decision to make a change. And it's just, to me, it's a very inspiring story, because how many people by the time they're in their 30s feel stuck and they're
Yeah,
just in that job and they're like,
right.
you know what, I'm gonna put my head down and do this for the next 30 years. and then collect Social Security hopefully someday if it's still there. I mean,
Yeah. No,
it's
it's
it's an
true.
inspiring story.
I appreciate that. I always talk about, and I say this to our new agents that I onboard all the time. Yeah, I don't want to feel like I just go through life working.
Yeah.
A lot of people just kind of go through life doing the 8 to 5, just are doing it for a paycheck so they can spend Saturday and Sunday, doing what they really enjoy doing. So we talk a lot about life work balance. And I say that, it's not work life balance, it's life work balance. You want to
Hmm.
do something that, you want to have a great life and you want to work to be able to have that life,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so that was, going through that counseling, going through, that period of time, you know, I kind of fell into it, but at the same time, I kind of knew, just
Sure.
a teeny bit, I knew this is kind of what I wanted to do, because of everything that I saw Peter being able to do, with the flexibility in the schedule, meeting new people. I love negotiating. My wife says
Hmm.
I love to argue, but negotiating is kind of my thing. Um, yeah, and just being out. I feel like when you're outside showing houses on a nice, beautiful day down in Florida, like, come on, like
Yeah.
that's pretty awesome. So,
So
um,
cool.
yeah, so like after that first deal happened, it was like, all right, just going 100 miles an hour now. Put my head down. Let's just rock and roll. So, over the next year and a half, I think there's 1,600 agents over at Charles Rutenberg. My last 2 years there, I was the number one agent, 2 years in a row, and in regards to volume and production, and said, you know what, I can do this myself.
Hmm.
I can, Charles Rutenberg, great company, they have a great business plan, but I feel like I can do it better.
Yeah.
So decided to take the brokerage license, or broker license, and or test, and pass that, and opened up our office in July 1st, in a small little, like, we're in it right now,
Yeah.
400 square foot little space in Winter Park Village, because that's all I could, I was really could afford, and it was just me. I had nobody else.
Yeah.
So ended up, first person I called was Peter, because I was like, man, I just opened my brokerage. Any interest in coming over? It wasn't even a question to him. He was
Cool.
like, dude, absolutely, let's do it. So that happened, and then a couple agents over from Charles Rutenberg came over, because they saw what I was doing and wanted to kind of, somehow, like, do that as well, right? So, and then it became a ripple effect, of the other agents that they knew came over, and now all of a sudden we're at 16 agents, full-time agents, with a couple more onboarding. And we have, Gabe here, who's our director of marketing, who's, the guy is just truly amazing when it comes to, like, social media. Like, we are beyond blessed. He's, he's from up north, and he came down here from on a Zoom interview. He had
Wow.
no idea who I was. The trust he put in me, was pretty awesome. But
Well said, Brian. He's also behind you listening right now. So you're saying all the right things. Shout
yeah,
out to Gabe.
yeah, exactly. But he's been a huge part of our growth as well, because some of the things we do on social media, I think are pretty awesome. If you haven't gone on our Instagram page and seen our keys videos,
Yeah.
they're just so awesome. When a buyer just ends up buying a house, we hand the keys off to them, have beautiful music, and it's just a cool, it's just a cool thing to be a part of. You can say, those first time home buyers, you buy, they bought that first house and you were a big part of it.
Yeah.
So, so we do a lot of that stuff, and he's just been a true blessing. So.
I do love your stuff on social media and everyone. So Brian is on TikTok now, which we have you may not know this, Brian, but our host, the Rich B, that's his handle on TikTok, and he's verified on TikTok. He's got like a
Oh,
million
wow.
plus followers. So Brian, you are also on TikTok, and the stuff you do is really funny. It's
Yeah.
light, it's good, and I know Gabe's a big influence on that. What's your handle on there? Is it just at Brian HYSER?
At Brian Heiser. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, B
I think
R
so.
I A N H Y S E
At,
R.
oh, it's at the Brian Heiser. Sorry.
The Brian HYSER.
Yeah. No, and
Thank
we're
you,
not
Gabe.
verified.
Thank you, Gabe.
Sorry.
So a couple things I want to mention. So not to fast track it, but from 2018 when you started through now, Um, it is. I mean, the growth that you've developed is incredible. I mean, to have a team total of 18. You were actually just recognized, which I was following this stuff on social media too. But just a couple of weeks ago, there's an Orlando Real Producers like award ceremony that they do each year, and there's 24,000 realtors in Orlando. You were awarded the top 50 realtor award,
Right.
which I believe is based on production and maybe some other things.
Yep.
But also, you were awarded the Professionalism Award, which is really cool because that's a committee of peers. So, for folks that don't know what that is, basically the top 500 agents in Orlando vote on that. And then once it gets whittled down to, I don't know how many people,
Five.
X amount
Yep.
of people, you get, they vote again.
Mm-hmm.
And you were awarded the Professionalism Award, which is just incredible. So, I mean, the idea that just a few short years ago, you were an unhappy chiropractor
Yeah.
seeking, passion and excitement in your career to where you are today is such an amazing success story. I have a couple questions to that. The first
Sure.
one is over these few short years, what what is something as you look back that you were maybe least expecting? Like what's a surprise to you? What's something that you could share with the audience that just something you weren't expecting to happen in this journey for you?
So back in 2018, getting my real estate license, I never thought I was actually going to start a brokerage.
Hmm.
That was never in the cards. It didn't happen until maybe I was in my third year over at Charles Rutenberg, where I started to kind of realize that a lot of what they were doing, I felt like I can kind of spin it and do it a different way, which would
Yeah.
benefit the agents more. But my plan, after I got my license, was just to hang my license at a brokerage and not have to worry about the risk or any of the business. It was more kind of like I was the business, which I loved having all of I was 100% responsible for myself. I talk to our agents all the time about building their personal brand and building their business because they are the business. The brokerage is great to have a nice name behind your name, but you are the business. And that was my focus, was just to build myself and just make enough money where I could have a great life.
Yeah.
Because that's what it was about. I remember in my early 20s, I was thinking, I want to do everything I can to make so much money and blah, blah, blah. And then I think there was a point in that mindset shifted to where it wasn't about the money. It was more about just having a good life,
Sure.
and being able to do like everything I want to do, but it's not focused on making millions of dollars. Um, so yeah, so like, the reason I decided to do the brokerage was because I felt like I could help other agents, do what I did, and kind of duplicate the processes that I went through. So
Yeah.
that was never in the cards, but I just felt like, it would be a lot of fun to be able to start something and bring agents on and say, this is how you need to do it. And I can promise you, if you'd follow these, 10 steps, you're going to be super successful and you're going to love the life that you created. So,
Man, I love that. I mean, that's just stuff that we preach often on this show is work-life balance. And I think when you hear that, a lot of times that conjures up this feeling of like that's someone's way of saying or asking to work less and
yeah,
have better balance. And that's not necessarily what that conjured up for you. For you, it was making sure that the work that you're doing, because you're going to input those hours anyway, that the work
right.
that you're doing, you love.
Yep.
And then that translates to a happier version of Brian HYSER, which
Yeah.
translates to a better dad, a better husband, a better everything.
Yeah.
And I just think that that's so important. It's cool, man. It's fun watching this develop. And there were things I learned today that I didn't even know. I feel like you have a career a future career in business development and coaching as well. So
Oh gosh.
this is really
Yeah.
exciting. What as we wrap up today, because we're hitting the 30-minute mark, as we wrap up, what's something you would want to leave the audience with that is just an actionable piece of advice it could be something within the real estate market, but I think maybe more
Um,
particular to career development and what you've experienced. What's something useful for the audience?
I mean, I think it's just it's kind of sit back and reflect on what you're doing in your current life, and and find out what you're passionate, to do. And, whether you're in your 20s, 30s, or you're in your 40s, maybe early 50s, there's still a lot of time for you to kind of make a change and do something that you enjoy doing. I mean, we only have one life, right? Doing something that you love to do is I think is important. I would say, just find something that you're passionate to do, and do it, whether it's a side hustle, or if it's, you go full time, do something that you're passionate, because I think it'll make you feel happier, I think,
Yeah.
and that will reflect on, the people that you're surrounded by. So,
Well, Brian, and the person who says that's easier said than done could listen back to episode number 51, where we address the whole conversation of easier said than done. And you got to do the hard things. You got to push through the hard things and figure out what you want in your life. So
make it a weekend thing, make it,
yeah.
do it on the weekends until it grows to a point where maybe you can kind of take a step away from your normal 9 to 5. So, but it's not an easy transition, but it's worth it, I think, if you really put your mind to it and put in the effort. So
I love it.
cool.
Brian HYSER, the man, the myth, the legend. Thank you for joining us on Above Board with Candor Path. We'll tag some of his socials in the comments in the description of this podcast, so you can go follow him. And Brian, thank you for being on the show, man.
Thanks for having me, brother. I'd love to do this again. It was a lot of fun.
Anytime. See you
All
guys.
right, man. Take it easy.